Member for Long Island, you're rising on.
I just would like through you to ask a question of the Minister for Immigration.
Very well.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes member for Long Island.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we all know, immigration is a very, very emotive issue in our country. And anything regarding immigration, especially our neighbors to the south, who make up the largest population of illegals in our country. I just wanted to ask through you, Mr. Speaker, for clarification from the Minister on the policies he's articulated recently. While we appreciate the great numbers of illegals that come from Haiti in particular, is this policy only directed towards the Haitian migrant population? Or is this in fact a wider, a catch-all for all of the illegals that are here? I'm just wondering, and I'm asking really because, whether we want to accept it or not, we have a lot of Bahamians, naturalized and otherwise, who have family members or who are of Haitian extraction. And I'm not saying that we need to condone any illegality with regards to this matter. I just want to have clarification on that. And if he can lend further clarification to this proposed stamp that is being suggested or implemented in passports, I'd appreciate it. But Mr. Speaker, I've said this before, and I just want to agree with the Minister. This is not just a governmental issue. I understand that there are Bahamians that are actually facilitating the movement of illegals throughout our country. And then when they get here, we're also facilitating the housing of illegals. And so this is an all-encompassing thing that needs to be dealt with holistically. So I commend them for whatever we can do to eradicate the illegals. But I don't want us to be just aiming our policies at just one grouping of people. And I'm just wondering if that's the case.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member for Foxhill, your response.
I think everybody is, I thank the member for a question. I think everyone is equally sensitized on that point. And what I would say is that it would be, I can't say unlawful because there's no statute law that you would be contravening, but certainly unconstitutional. The Constitution says you cannot discriminate on the grounds of national origin. So certainly we're very conscious of that in terms of the policy. What I think may have caused some confusion is the fact that the only office that we are going to provide, we're able from a manpower point of view to provide the ability to certify that you've actually been seen, or we're putting in special provisions, let me put it that way, to be certified as being seen is going to be Port-au-Prince. We have offices already that have the ability to do that in other countries. So Port-au-Prince will be an addition, so to speak. And I think that may have created the confusion about this. But the policy is that if you have no legal status in the Bahamas, you cannot apply for a work permit in the Bahamas. Right. So that applies generally. Right. What I said was that special facilities are going to be put in Port-au-Prince which do not now exist to allow those who are Haitian to be able to accomplish that fact. That's not such a difficult thing because there are personnel already in the United States who can do that if it's necessary. And lawful doesn't necessarily mean that you have a work permit or anything. You can be here lawfully as a visitor, but you have to have some status. The reason why this has been put in place is because what was happening was the present policy, pre-1st November, is that you could not get a work permit if you were not lawfully in the Bahamas. Immigration would say when someone shows up with such an application, you must demonstrate that you are not in the Bahamas. And so that meant that if you were here illegally, you had to get on a plane or a boat, go back to your home country, and show us the evidence that you left the country. Well, people were then showing up at immigration with documents that were obviously forged, saying that they had left the country. And it had become the rise in these applications had come at a time when we had that great rise in illegal migrants coming into the Bahamas. So at the same time that we're seeing this rapid rise in illegal migrants coming to the Bahamas, there are all these fresh applications coming in for people who have no status, and then they're producing documents saying, yes, we sent them out of the country. So obviously there was some fraudulent operation taking place. The best way for us to have dealt with that is to say, you have to be seen in your home country. And that's what the policy is designed to do, to stop the fraud that was connected with this. Yeah, I think there was a second question you asked.
There was a question about stamp, member for Long
I
Island.
would like to have that clarified. With the stamp in particular, you know, today you might have a work permit, give birth to a child, and maybe the work permit is up the day you give birth to the child, or so, you understand what I'm saying. And so essentially clarity as to this stamp that sort of gives some permanence. I think that, but just before, well, I'll just finish up as well. It seems to me that we also have another grouping of individuals in the country that have found a way around the immigration policy. I don't want to identify the country, but I know many of them are domestic workers, and they are working for St. Anne's today, decide they don't really want to work with St. Anne's anymore, and they find a more affluent person like maybe East Grand Bahama or Central Grand Bahama, and they decide that, you understand, but they are making application and changing over midstream. So they have found a way as well around this. And so if we're going to be applying these principles and policies, I want to know if we're doing it for that. But if I can get a question on the stamp, because I think anybody born to the Bahamas, born in the Bahamas, according to our Constitution, is entitled upon the age of 18 to apply. So, just wondering about that.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member for Foxhole.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, with regard to the group of domestic workers, and I'm familiar with a number of cases of those cases, and where they've actually come to me, I've insisted that the person has to go back to their home country and to certify that they've actually left the country in order for that transfer to take place. That was not the practice that I met in place. But what has happened is many of the people who were employers object to the fact that they have spent enormous resources to get these people, particularly from a far place, and then the person in the middle just abandons the job, goes to someone else, and then they lose all the money which they've invested in bringing that person here. So the policy is now that those persons must go back to their home country, and that must be certified. So that is the policy there. With regard to the stamp, when I was asked the question about this, I gave what I considered to be the legally correct answer to this, and that is the children of parents who are non-nationals who are born in the Bahamas will only be qualified for a residence stamp if their parents are lawfully in the Bahamas. And just reasoning this out this way, if you are not lawfully in the Bahamas, how can the Bahamas government, your parents are not lawfully in the Bahamas, how can the Bahamas government give a resident permit to the child of someone who's not lawfully in the Bahamas? Because under the law, the child goes with the parents. I was asked the question, so what happens to the child? I said, well, if the parents have to leave and go back home, the children have to go with the parents. Right. So now the question of those who have this contingent right to citizenship of the Bahamas, that is, who are able to apply at the age of 18, but before their 19th birthday. What I said is, I would be recommending to my colleagues an amendment to the visa regulations which would permit anybody who is in that position to get a visa almost as of right to come back and make the application if that person is required to make a physical presence in the Bahamas to do so. And I thought that that was the way to meet it. But here's the issue. We've been having in processing citizenship applications we found that in many cases the officials were not able to say whether or not the birth certificates were properly issued from the registrar's department, because you know our birth certificates don't have biometrics. And that is something which we have to look at in law, applying biometrics to the birth certificates. So one of the reasons why citizenships applications have been held up of late is because we had to send back in mass hundreds of applications so that these birth certificates could be checked for their authenticity. That process has now been finished, and so we are going through them again. So what is one of the reasons why we believe that this policy of giving a resident stamp to everyone who is born here, which really should be, when you think about it, it should be the law. It is the law now. Let's not take our neighbors from the South. Let's take American citizens. When American citizens have children born in this country, the first thing they do after leaving the hospital is to go down to that embassy and get a passport for the United States of America, even if they're Bahamian citizens. And then they come to immigration and get a residence stamp to be in the Bahamas. Now, our neighbors to the south have traditionally not been doing so. And many of them believe that it will be to their prejudice to get a Haitian passport. But they should have a Haitian passport. If their parents are Haitian, they should have a Haitian passport, and there should be a residence stamp which permits them to be in the Bahamas. And that's what we said. If your parents, if you're born here, you get the passport, we will give you a residence stamp. And we're also creating a category of persons so that the stamp is not expensive to get. It'll be a nominal price, so it's not going to be expensive to get, and the bureaucracy will not be complicated. That's all we said. What happens to be the problem is if your parents are not here lawfully, we do not think that we could, in those circumstances, issue a residence stamp to the children of those parents. That's our position. Yes, the visa, yes, to allow them to come back into the Bahamas to make the application. Right, yeah.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Thank you, and thank both members for your intervention.